Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live October 21st, 2020. We've got a packed show. We got to make up for the whole month that we've been missing out on the road, workshops or various travels. I think the big news many of you are tuning in for is my thoughts on the EOS R5. We will get to that during the show. It's kind of my draft or early review. We got to talk about that. Got to talk about the RF lenses. We've got to get an opinion on the new Nikon Z6 and Z7 Mark IIs. Is this lazy of Nikon, or is it just all that we needed to make these hot sellers? And new updates to Photoshop and Lightroom, an update to a fantastic alternative to Lightroom, and I've got the Pixel 5 here. I might be reaching the end of the line with the Pixel phones. So we'll be talking about that, plus get an opinion on the iPhones, because I'm an Android guy. But as usual, I'm very happy to welcome, starting with David Carr, back to the show. David, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, hang on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little soft.
Yeah, interesting. I got it all cranked here, so I don't know what the deal is. Anyway,
Could be me.
it might be you. Okay, well, I'll just I'll enunciate and project. Yeah, it's good to be back though. That was quite a break, and I missed it every Wednesday, but I've been keeping myself busy, so good to be back.
Yeah, to just let people know, we were on a workshop together, the RV/camping tour of the Redwoods and the Oregon coast back at the end of September. And so it hasn't been that long since I've seen you.
Right.
But it has been a little bit since we've done the show.
Yeah, it has been a while, and like I said, it's good to be back. Oh, there it goes. Look at that. My microphone.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
Sam. Yep.
Okay, here it was. Yeah, it was me. It's been so long that my gear is all rusty, and anyway, yeah, great to be back. That trip was amazing, but it's amazing how time flies. I mean, obviously the fact that we're already in October of this year, and I remember when you and Steve and I started doing these as the three of us. I mean, that just seems like it was a couple months ago, and here we are. It's almost the end of the year, really. I mean, we're about to enter the Christmas season before you know it, and it's like, so yeah. Thanks for having me.
We're getting to that part of the season that I call like the top 10 lists, where everybody likes to make the lists of everything.
That's right.
This year probably just be how much this year sucked, and yes, I agree for most of us.
You're right. Yeah, I think you're right. So.
Let's welcome Steve to the show as well. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today too. And when I mentioned the iPhone, although David Carr, you're an iPhone user as well, so I'd be interested to hear both of your opinions about these new iPhones. But Steve, how are you?
I'm great. Man, it is good to be back. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah, you sound good.
My equipment is probably a little rusty, but I feel like I'm totally rusty. We haven't done the show in a while, and there's just been a lot of life that's gone on, right? You guys, Toki, you've done a couple tours. Carr, you did a tour. I've been shooting a lot of homes, but I also did a motorcycle trip across the country.
Oh, that's right.
And, you know, there's just like a lot has happened over the past few weeks, but it is great to be back. And I'm excited about getting this year over with. At the same time, there's been a lot of really great things that have happened this year too. I think it's pretty easy to see the frustrations, and they're definitely there, and the disappointments and everything else. It feels like we've just been getting a black eye on top of a black eye this year, constantly. But if you look closely, I think there's some really great things that have also happened. Anyway, it's certainly allowed us to do this show as the three amigos more often, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, based on what you were just saying, Steve, I heard a great thing today. This guy was talking about how, life is just hard. Life is there's a lot of tragedy in life. There's a lot of hard stuff that happens. It's just, it's not just a cakewalk all the time. It's rarely a cakewalk. And, but we have as human beings, the ability to be resilient and to find strength even in hard times. And so this year, I think, has been a real testament of that for so many people that, there's been a lot of challenges, and yet we just rise to the challenge. I mean, if we're decent people, we do. And I mean, I think point well taken. I mean, it's been a hard year, but it's also there have been some really sweet moments. So
Yeah.
And I want to say welcome to the chat room. Those of you who a couple of weeks ago was the first post that someone said, "Hey, I'm really starting to miss Mishmash, and just I appreciate that. I'm sorry that we were away for a little while, and I just appreciate you guys taking the time to say we missed the show. We definitely miss doing the show. And so, chat room, thanks again for joining us. You certainly make this show a lot better. And yeah, welcome. So tons of stuff to talk about. I do want to catch up a little bit, Steve. I want to hear a little bit about your motorcycle trip. But I think the thing we should start with is the thing we're all kind of chatting off screen right now, and many of our chat room is also, I think, watching. It's okay if you're doing double duty right now, and that is the PPA image competition that is happening right now, or I should say the live judging that is happening of the PPA images that many of you all have submitted and figuring out whether you've merited or not. This was the first year that I've really watched, and I'm finding it fascinating and helpful. Without even having entered any images, it's just really good to see what the judges are noticing, what they like, what they say is an immediate pass, and it's fun to start, for me at least, start guessing beforehand as the image comes up. I'm like, nope, snap, that looks like a snapshot to me, guys.
I've found that it's surprising, because a lot of times I think, I'll look at it, I'll see an image pop up and I'll say, no, there's no way that's going to merit, and then it'll merit, and then there'll be some that it's just completely opposite. A lot of times, if I don't think it's going to merit, a lot of times it won't, but I'm amazed at some of the ones that do. But I'm starting to see more of a pattern in what really does work, and it's a lot of it seems to be that initial impact, and just because you got a cute shot of a puppy dog doing something cute, doesn't necessarily mean it's competition worthy. You've got to take it to that next level of just a finished work that really speaks. And so it's been very helpful to watch.
Yeah. Just to make sure people know, not everybody watching might know what PPA is. It's the Professional Photographers of America, and being a member and working through education and submission of images, you can become or receive the title of Master Photographer. It's something that takes time, and you certainly work up to it. But the image competition is an integral part of that, and it's just really interesting to watch. And as some people, in our group, first off, as David McKay and I were chatting earlier today, to go from being a photographer that wants to be a little bit better to being a photographer that wants to be better and being a PPA member and aware of this competition and entering it, even if you don't merit in your first year or second year, to receive that level of feedback and to be working as a group towards this kind of goal, I think is just fantastic. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's been so awesome to see so many people, pen members, getting involved this year. And I've been away. I've been out of the house a lot, and for some reason, the mobile version, they had to build a whole new platform this year for judging, because they're not in one place judging, and there are a lot of challenges with that. So the mobile platform isn't working as well as it has in the past, which is really unfortunate. So I'm not able to keep up on everything all the time, but just having so many people involved has been not only inspiring, but I think a huge education for those pen members that want to improve their photography. Even if they haven't entered, they're just watching the judging. You start to see what became what was the inspiration for our competition that we do every month with pen, the 12 elements that we like to use. And those are just good elements to learn in all of photography, not just in competition. So even if you're just watching it, you're learning a ton by seeing what judges are saying and doing on certain images. There was one that came up, and it had the hugest white vignette, and I was laughing to myself because I thought, oh man, if this thing goes merit, I'm going to have to just eat my words, because we joke about that all the time. And fortunately, it didn't merit. It wasn't one of our pen members. It was
okay. I saw one come up earlier today with a very heavy dark vignette, and it was too much, in my opinion. Again, it wasn't one of our pen members as far as I know. And it almost merited. And then there was a follow-up discussion about it. And one of the drawbacks was just the level of which the vignette had been applied. It was just too much. Yeah, so it's great. It's just really cool. And if you're watching this and you're like, wow, that, master photographer, I'm miles away from that. We all felt that way once. And some of us still aren't there. myself included. But I would say Penn, the Photo Enthusiast Network, is a great start and a stepping stone towards kind of getting regular feedback on your images, and then working up to this. And many of our members have been members for years, and this is the first year that many people are contributing or submitting images, and it's just really, really cool. If you're watching this and you're not a Penn member, you can join for the first year. We are still running that 2020 discount. It's $24 for your first year, access to hundreds of hours of training videos on Lightroom and Photoshop, posing, how to shoot the stars, all kinds of stuff. How to shoot the stars is on my brain. I've been doing a lot of that lately. Plus, getting regular feedback on your images. We'll have a segment of the show where we do that. And then you also get a monthly higher level feedback on your images with a chance to win fantastic prizes from Bay Photo. Plus access to an awesome community, of which I say every week that we have the show, and I'll say again, most of them are in the chat, or many of them are in the chat, and they really make the community awesome, because they are the community, and they're an awesome group of people. So I just really appreciate all that, everybody hanging out in there. And Roy, I also want to introduce Roy. He's in the chat. He's collecting questions. If you've got questions while we're going through the show, you can just put a little Q in front of it, throw it in there, and he'll be collecting them. And we often just kind of hit them as we're going along, but sometimes we do a quick rapid fire answering questions at the end of the show too.
Yep.
Cool. Steve, you take any pictures on your motorcycle road trip?
I knew that question was going to come up. I brought some gear with me. I brought I brought the X1D, and I brought two lenses. The two lenses that I own for it: a 21 millimeter and a 45, which is 16 and a half and 35 respectively. And I don't think I shot it once. I took some iPhone shots, snapshots. I visited a couple buddies. We took some video. We took some posing shots, arriving and departing, that kind of thing. All just snapshot stuff. I got about a third of the way in the trip, and the first third, I was crossing a lot of desert. I was leaving California, went across Mojave, and got into Nevada and Utah, and it was blazing hot. I mean, it was 105 degrees, and you got the desert winds and stuff like that. Like it was pretty gnarly. And so, quite honestly, I just had the throttle pinned, and I was just getting across, and didn't really feel like stopping and getting my gear out and stuff. And there just wasn't much to take that I was inspired by. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was just desolate, like crazy. But then I got into, I was in Mammoth Lakes. That was beautiful. And I got into the Rockies. Visited a buddy in Colorado and stuff, and there was plenty to take pictures of. But I don't know, I got a third of the way into it, and I just thought to myself, it's just not really that kind of trip. It was a very private trip. I didn't tell many people about it. COVID's going on, so it's not really the time to just be making the rounds, busting in on a bunch of people and stuff. And so I was kind of just the lonely guy on my motorcycle for the week. But there was something really cool about that too. So. Unfortunately, it just wasn't much of a photography trip.
I kind of experienced the same thing. I drove down to the Zion workshops, it's about 17 hours if you drive straight, and we left enough time going down to have some stops, and we did some photography, mostly at night. And it's, I mentioned, if you've watched the show, I purchased a little minivan. We've turned it to a minivan camper. I really stand by it's like the best photographic purchase ever, because you can just be set up right outside of it in this epic location and have this warm little cozy home. I mean, it would have been even better if I had like a Sprinter maybe, and it's a little bit bigger, but that wasn't in the budget yet. So it's just been great. And then the return trip, I had a couple spots I wanted to hit, but we had much more of a time crunch. We didn't have quite as much time. We needed to get home. And it's tough. You either need to say, hey, on this trip, I'm getting from point A to point B and not be stressed about whether or not you're trying to take pictures, or you need to say, hey, this is a photo trip, and you need to kind of arrange it so that you don't have too many miles to do each day. Otherwise, you're gonna kind of fight that guilt.
Yeah, and one of the things I ran into is all my working hours on the trip were daylight hours. And so I would literally get up early in the morning, get all ready, have breakfast, and some coffee and stuff. And, I usually have to work on the air pressure of the tires or something like that. And as soon as the sun started coming up, I needed to hit the road because I was doing about 450, 500 miles a day average. I had a couple days where it was, 600 plus miles. And that's a lot of ground to cover in daylight hours. It was as I was traveling east, I was dealing with the fact that, time was changing and sun was starting to set a little earlier.
Yeah.
And, so I was always kind of fighting the clock based on, and now I could have done shorter days, but I gave myself basically 6 days to get home. And about halfway through it, I was like, I just want to get home. I'm crossing like Kansas, Missouri, and not to knock those states at all. I've been to plenty of cool places in all those states, but I was getting beat up by the wind like you wouldn't believe. These gusts would just hit you, and you're passing a semi going 80 miles an hour. You're like this, your head just gets really sore with a helmet buffeting and stuff. So I'd get to my hotel room and I would just crash, get up in the morning,
I bet.
Start going again. So
gosh,
it just, I just wasn't very inspired photographically.
I don't understand. I don't understand why.
It was a pain in the ass trip. It was not. It was a great challenge that I was really excited about, and I decided to just kind of take it in as it came and leave it at that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think there are a lot of situations where, I'll have relatives and friends who are like, oh, I bet you're going to get great shots of this or that. And I'm like, well, I'm probably not going to get any shots of this or that, depending on the situation. Because if it's all going to be midday sun and like there's nothing inspiring, the stuff we do on the McKay trips especially, we're usually capitalizing on the morning, the early morning and the evening or late night. And, it's just daytime is just usually not that inspiring for photos. So.
Yeah. I will say though, if you're ever in, I believe it was in Utah. I was on the it was Nevada. I was on the extraterrestrial highway, and there's a place called the Ailey Inn.
Okay.
And you gotta stop there, man. I had lunch there. It was just this beat up little diner in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, cool.
Somewhere close to Area 51, and they really milked that whole. The owner is this really old lady who has just probably been sitting in the same stool for about 50 years. She's just like, why are you getting potato chips? I make a salad every day. You do? Okay, well, I was a little scared to order your salad out here, but I guess I could try it. And it was outstanding. It was awesome.
That's funny.
Was she like, tell him Large Marge sent you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. David Carr, what have you been up to since I've seen you on the road trip?
Quite a bit. So I guess I had shot that wedding right before that, so that was pretty busy just getting that edited. But I've done several like family photo shoots, and I'm doing school photos at the school that my boys go to. The last 2 days I've been doing that, and tomorrow I've got a full day of school photos. There's an ad agency in the city that has hired me for some shoots for really just a heavy equipment rental company that needed shots of their equipment at job sites. So it's a really easy gig and it pays well. And so it's like, just go take pictures of it. And they've been really happy with that. So I've been doing a lot of photos. Cool. And and that's been fun. And then my youngest son, Wyatt, just turned 16. And he bought himself a car. We kind of helped him, but he paid for a good bit of it. A 2009 VW Beetle, and I have been restoring that for a couple of weeks now. I've been just tearing it apart and putting it back together. So
I've been loving your Insta stories on that, and it sounds so weird that you're restoring a 2009.
I know. Well, it was trashed. I mean,
I saw pictures of it. My favorite so far, though, is the headliner made out of headlines.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah, so that's
that's where that came from. I saw that story, but I didn't have any context to it.
Yeah, I should have posted more. I was so busy. So so my son's really into Harry Potter, and that's like the newsprint from like all the Harry Potter stuff, and it's like fabric you could just buy at the fabric store. And the headliner was all falling down and sagging, and there was just glue everywhere. And so I just wrapped it with that, and it actually, it's one of those things where it was in good shape in a lot of ways, and then in other ways it was just trashed on the inside. So I've been replacing some fabric on the door panels and just really, really cleaned it up. But it runs well, and it just needed a little love. So it's almost finished.
Cool.
I'm pretty excited about it. So
Cool.
yeah,
Good. Yeah. And as I mentioned, I've done the driving down to the Zion workshops and back. That's taken up most of my time, but it's nice because that gave me a really nice opportunity to just be out and shooting with both the R6 behind me and the R5. I'll just mention the Zion workshops. I have enough people for at least one, if not two, next year. So if you're interested, send me a quick little email, toby@photorec.tv. I'll put you on the pre-list. When we finished the Zion workshop, I wanted to go to Death Valley because I've never actually been to Death Valley. I was like, I want to go to Death Valley. But honestly, as I was leaving Zion and dropping the participants off, I was like, I would be okay just turning around and going right back to Zion for my, on my own or with Chris for a couple of days. I love that park so much. The Narrows is just absolutely spectacular. It's just such a cool experience. So I'm looking forward to doing that again next year. And we've got a Southwest trip scheduled, which hits Zion as well. Doesn't do the Narrows, but it's just a lot of fun. So. Yeah,
awesome.
And Sue in the group was on the Zion tour, and she had a good time. Thank you, Sue, for saying that.
Hey, and I dig the new T-shirt there, Kobe.
Oh yeah, Chris bought me this in Zion. So a little Zioned out. I got Zion here, and I got Zion on the poster back here. That was a present from Timmy. Thank you, Timmy. It's just such a cool park. They set visitation records in September based on how busy it was. I think October's going to set another record. It's busy, but that doesn't mean you should stay away, because if you go in early enough, you go in you wait until the evening, you can find these beautiful little nooks and crannies where you basically have it to yourself, and it's pretty nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And Colleen too. Yeah, Colleen. All right. Let's dive into the part of the show that we have a lot of fun of, and we were talking about the Professional Photographers of America image competition. This is kind of like the beginning of prepping for that. You send us in your images. This is PEN members, and we give you some valuable, we think, feedback on these images and share some tips and tricks. And we'll probably talk a little bit about the new features in Lightroom. Honestly, I have looked at them and played with them the teeny tiniest bit. Steve or David Carr, have you played with the update to Lightroom at all?
Not with Lightroom, but I really want to hear some of your thoughts on the new sky replacement within Photoshop. I haven't tried it. I've been using Skylum for quite a while now, but I'm excited about that in Photoshop. So not to change the subject, but I haven't the Lightroom stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited to try that. I haven't messed with the Photoshop stuff. I did work with the color grading tool in Lightroom last night on some family photos I did last week that actually needed some color love. And it was pretty impressive. I mean, just how quickly I was able to get the colors to a better place. Not that I couldn't have done that with the sliders, but it just felt like it was a much quicker path to a better tonality. So,
Yep. I think we'll even play with it on some of maybe one of these images in here. All right, first up we've got Heather's. This is the Navajo Bridge in outside of Page, Arizona. And it's got some really nice symmetry here with these two bridges. One is no longer used by cars, one is just used by people, but they've done a nice job of basically making two symmetrical bridges. One's historic, one's not. And I think, Heather, you've done a nice job of capturing this.
The left side looks like the bridge is about to fall over to the left. It looks like it's cracked in the middle and it's leaning to the left.
It does look like that, doesn't it? There's just like a little bit of shadow on that gate there, or on the fence there, and so it looks like it's missing a piece.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing the maker of the photograph here. I'm just that angle was really, really weird. I couldn't tell if it was built that way or if it should be more straight up and down. If it should be more straight up and down, we need to fix that in the transform tool. And you're already on it. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
That's so Heather has done one guided level, it looks like. So let me That's tricky because all of these are a triangle angle. Could we put it right here? I think that one is straight up and down. It's going to change it pretty drastically. Well, we're losing a lot of the image, but we've gotten it straight. What do we think about that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the problem with the transform tool, and that's why you typically want to shoot, if you're shooting any kind of architecture, bridges included, you want to shoot wider than you think you're going to crop into. That way you've got room to play with straightening angles. So, but now what happened is you've got the other bridge on the right side is kind of gone along. So you sort of need to straighten both of those out, but not necessarily at the spot where they hit the rock in the background, or there you go, kind of at the front. It still looks a little, you might want to move that line around a little bit so it's a little bit more natural.
Yeah. So Heather, what I'm using is just the railing here because it's really hard to figure out what part of the bridge is vertical because most of these are at an angle, little triangles down and back. And so I used railings.
I used that square or that rectangle that appears where the bridge, both bridges meet the rock in the background. You just set the whole thing up. But the limitation with these guided transform tools, they only give you 4 lines. And I've never quite understood why that is the case. I wish we could use like 10 lines and just square up this angle to that angle. And basically you need to go into Photoshop to fix a lot of that kind of thing. But,
yeah, I was going to say Photoshop's probably where you're going to have to be to really fine-tune that.
Yeah. Other than the straightening of the bridge, how do we feel about the sky?
I think it could use some more detail. I mean, definitely. I don't know if there is detail to be, to darken it up and get a little more, I don't know, just texture out of it, or it does look like there's something that can be done to it.
Well, a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. It's always tough whenever you've got sky above foreground. Unless there's something really, really dramatic happening. It's I do like the fact that she didn't include a lot of the sky. At least it's because sometimes we see images where there's so much sky that's doing nothing, and it just really takes away from the image. And it's not necessarily one you want to crop below the sky, I don't think. But
yeah, I think it'd feel too tight.
Yeah, I mean, you could, I guess, but well, I don't know. But all of a sudden, like, if you just kind of step back and look at it from a contrast and detail perspective, you can see, in my opinion, you can see why the sky can be a distraction because it's this big white line at the top of the image. So that's why bringing a little more detail out or replacing it or something, is it can just tone that down.
Yeah. I think the choice to go black and white, though, Heather, was a nice one here.
Yeah.
In that it really just kind of gets that nice crispiness of the bridge against the rocks and all of that in the background.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's move on. We got Oso's. I think he submitted this a while ago that we might have skipped it over. Oso is our Mongolian guide who now regularly submits images in. And I'm just going to come in off of that dirt patch and thinking about rule of thirds somewhere around there. And then how about contrast? Add a little bit.
Yeah.
And warm it a little bit. Ooh, not that much.
Yeah, I brighten those shadows a bit too. It looks to me. Let me enlarge this. Just, I'm missing a lot right around the face.
Yeah.
And that's really the focal point. That's what I want to see. I'm less concerned with the landscape and then that shadow's being cut off over there. It's kind of, but I maybe consider, since the shadow's already being cut off, maybe come in just tighter on it so that you can focus more on the animal itself.
Yeah. Don't necessarily need to leave it so in the third. What do you think? Yeah? Looks funny. I look over on a second screen and it's quite green on that screen.
Yeah, it kind of looks a little green on mine. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just kind of wonder if black and white would be beneficial at this point. I mean, then again, I don't know.
It actually helps the what is this anyway? Is it, elk or something? What?
A Mongolian elk, let's say. Sure.
Okay. It helps it to stand out by going black and white because it's relatively dark. You got a lot of snow and light grass and stuff, and now it's less camouflaged into the grass. So I like the call going black and white.
Yeah, the tricky thing with a shot like this is, I mean, it's what so many of us struggle with, is just not having enough reach to really get in on the subject, which the subject in this case, is this elk or whatever this thing is. It's hard to when you've got all this area around it. I mean, we've already cropped in a good bit. You probably don't want to keep cropping to get right in on it, because you're going to start losing some resolution. But ideally, if you have a lens that can reach, or if you can get a little closer, you really can then get the shot. And seeing it that way, you get the idea of, it may not have the resolution to really be like printable, but at least you get the idea of, if you're able to get in closer, because that's really the thing you're showing in this image more than anything. The setting is just sort of there, and so.
Yeah, and you can really use the crop to add some drama to a relatively bland setting. So Toby, if you go back to the crop tool and you just do something that's, say, really super horizontal and narrow, you could do that way, or I would say go the other direction. Yeah, put it all the way over on that left side, and then just show a lot of the lighter snow and stuff over there.
Yeah,
it can just add some drama to a that's relatively flat.
Yeah, nice. All right, thanks, Oso. We're gonna move on. Chris Hartman's got this Sherman Stars Low. He's even got it virtually matted. And as someone who's been shooting a lot of astrophotography lately, Sherman, you've done, I think, a really nice job here.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sherman,
any thought?
You go ahead.
I
was gonna say, like, I like the warm tonality of it. I've been kind of doing that a little bit more with my star shots over the last few years. Getting Toby and you and I have talked about this a little bit, but getting away from that really blue sky. It may have been a slightly overdone, but it looks really cool. You see all that detail in the Milky Way here.
Yeah.
What I would caution you, though, because it is virtually matted, is go really easy on that stroke line around the side, because even though it's tied into the warmer tones of this scene, you want the warmer tones to strictly be kind of isolated within the Milky Way. You don't want to, number one, you don't want to drag the viewer out of the picture so that they see a really thick stroke line that creates too much of a border. And number two, you don't want it to be so thick and so the same as the critical point in the photograph that the eye wants to stay focused on. So I find myself really wanting to gaze into this Milky Way, but it's constantly being pulled out by this thicker stroke line that's the same color.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Nice. I cooled it down a teeny bit, and I've been talking about this a lot. Definitely personal preference. I know you, Steve, and I we've talked about this a bunch. I think a little cooler just allows for this kind of nice balance over here, but really just -8 is all. Otherwise, this is a really nice shot, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Awesome shot.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We've got Diane Frankenfield's Long Stem Evening Primrose with Buds.
All right.
And Diane, it's just not as sharp as I would like. And I just say that right off the bat because I know coming over YouTube, it might be hard for David Carr and Steve to see that. I think there's a lot to love about this composition and the framing. Exposure is nailed. There's a lot of great things. But without it being sharp, none of that really matters.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
The only other thing I'd say is watch where you are deciding to crop at the bottom or compose out in the field. I'd love to see just a little bit more room to this bud so that we get kind of all three nice clean stems down below it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a sharper version of this, or you could try running it through Topaz, ideally though, you'd get a nice sharp shot out in the field.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. You've got a decent shutter speed, great aperture, all your settings look good. It looks like focus might just be off. That's the only thing I can think of. So,
Yeah.
we've got Maggie Helton's sunflower field, and and some bugs. Yeah. And this is the shot that I thought maybe we want to try out Photoshop sky replacement. Now, that's a little, maybe rude of me to say, hey, Maggie, I like your shot, but let's go use this as an example of sky replacement. But I'll just say off the bat, the sky's doing some weird things up here that are a little distracting to me. So that's why I got that. We have like these, I don't know what this banding is here. It doesn't really look like it's clouds. I think there's a lot to love about this shot, but then I get pulled up into the sky, which looks a little funny.
Yeah, I agree. The tone, like the color tones of the sky are pretty pleasing to me, but there's just something about the detail that feels it feels like it doesn't fit. So
yeah, I tell you what, just to try to fix it real quick in Lightroom, I just drag texture and clarity all the way down, and I might even do a little reverse dehaze. And then it gets softer. You could also up the noise reduction, which also just further softens it. Now we have this kind of softer looking sky that I think fits well. Be careful though, I would then get the brush within it and erase it off this petal to make sure that you're not softening the actual petal itself.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's, Maggie, if we may be so bold, let's take this over to Photoshop real quick. It is now Photoshop 2021. Good job, Adobe. You've added a year to that. And let's look at the sky replacement tool. I posted about this update yesterday in the Photo Enthusiast Network group and kind of said, hey, sky replacement built in. Now, I know there's been programs. Luminar AI has had sky replacement options for years. And Steve, you've used that some with real estate work, right?
Yeah, I use it. I use it quite often, actually. It just depends on what's going on with the sky, what time I can do the shoot. And, not all flat skies are bad skies, but I think it does an outstanding job. I'm super impressed with it, and I've had some incredible feedback from some of my agents that just love it. But you gotta work at it. You gotta know how to use it, but still. It's got to be a sky that could exist. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to pick the sun going down in a place where the sun doesn't go down on that property.
yeah.
Have you ever used it outside of real estate photography?
Just a couple times when I first got the software to play around with my landscape photos. But yeah, I have. I've used it on a couple pictures probably that I've shared publicly. I think I'd have to go back and check. And I'm just trying to think. I've got three landscape photos at IPC right now, but none of those were sky replacements. So,
okay. Yeah. I don't think I said the word cheating, but many people in the group in the discussion kind of felt like it could be cheating. But then most people that answered or talked about it said, it's something I might try, but I would only use my own skies as a replacement. So I don't know, David Carr, do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I actually have one shot that I took this summer where I did use my own sky. I actually I knew the sky was blown out. It was a shot of a bird, and I knew the sky was blown out behind it, and I saw some beautiful sky kind of off towards the horizon. So I took a shot there and then just blended them. And I was like, okay, it's a little bit. I mean, I don't know what cheating is, because you could kind of say everything we're doing is cheating because we're taking what we took and then adding stuff and, manipulating it. But I guess I understand there's a point where it's like, man, you've turned it into a full-on composite at this point, which isn't a bad thing. It's just, don't pretend like you just took this pristine shot when you've completely manipulated a whole portion of it. So I don't know.
I think that Tanya just actually put a comment in the live chat that I happen to agree with. Sky replacement isn't cheating if you do it well enough and you can't tell. That's the whole reason why it exists, that that you want to even use this type of functionality is to be able to, not just create something that's just crazy, like, hey, look what I can do, but more like, here's the way I saw this scene. There have been, I think a sky like that right there, Toby, that you just selected, that looks awesome. Now you got to go in and you got to spend some time fine tuning it.
Yeah.
But it becomes an art piece, right? As soon as you start editing it at all, it's really become an expression of you as an artist. And we talk about photography, finding your artistic voice. I'm very clear with my agents about sky replacement. I say, look, if this is the only time that we can shoot, and it's just not a great time, and the sky just looks crummy, and I think that you'll have a much better chance of driving interest in the property by replacing the sky, I will do it. I have plenty of skies available, both of my own and a thing, and a library of them. And I'll select whatever I feel is the best to tell the story of this property within realistic boundaries.
There you go.
I know some of them are crazy with the stars and the
yeah, you'd see that on 500px or something.
right.
Yeah, it's just so as you guys have been talking, I've been playing here, and I just for the first time brought in one of my own images. These skies all here are what Adobe provides. It's just here under Edit and then Sky Replacement. It's got its own menu item, and as Tanya brings up, well, first off, it does a really nice job. I mean, look around these edges, and it blends.
What I was impressed with Skylum or Luminar is this artificial intelligence that they use now to analyze the photo and where the sky placement is just awesome. I think
incredible,
fascinating, and I think it's a game changer for editing. It's the next step, and there's some real scariness to some of this AI stuff, but man, it does a good job. It's so cool.
Yeah. And Nancy makes a great point, and you got to watch out for it. You got to make sure your light is right. Just because you have an epic sky doesn't take away from the fact that you might have light coming from the left or the right, and then you look at the sky, and the light you can tell is coming from an entirely different direction.
Yeah.
But this is impressive.
Yeah.
The other stuff that they showed off in the demos is stuff that isn't quite in Lightroom yet, or I wasn't paying entirely attention because I felt like it was the iPad version. But the kind of make people smile, the puppet warping to the face, I don't know if you guys caught any of that. It was pretty impressive as well. So it's just kind of some of that smarts that we've seen in our phones, especially the iPhones with a portrait lighting, it can recognize the face. It knows how to light the face. This is very similar technology, except instead of lighting the face, it's actually manipulating parts of the face to make the person smile a little bit more, or take a little weight off, or take a little age off, which, that's been a technique that's been around for a while, but it's getting easier and easier. And as you say, Steve, a little scary with how well the AI is working.
It's
very
scary.
No, when I'm doing sky replacements, it's mostly real estate photography, so that's the world that I tend to live in. I do the replacement usually in Skylum. I'm going to try some of the Photoshop stuff, and then I bring it back into Photoshop. And there is a way of relighting the entire scene to kind of match the sky that I put in. And I'm very careful with that. Kind of like salt on food. A little bit can really bring out the flavor, but too much will spoil the dish. So I do all that, and then I come back into Photoshop, and then I go into Camera Raw, and I make global adjustments to the overall scene when it comes to white balance.
Yeah, it's good.
The temperature and the tint and the whites and the blacks, and the shadows and the highlights. I kind of reprocess the whole thing as a new photo with the new sky so that it all kind of fits together, and then I'll suck it back into the Lightroom and hook that up. So just that's kind of my workflow on doing a sky replacement. I should probably do a video tutorial on it at some point.
That would be great. Yeah, especially now that it's all built in, and it's just so easy. With this shot, I had quite a boring sky in the shot, and one click. This is one of Photoshop's skies. I think it does a nice job.
Yeah, it really does. There's something that comes to mind here, though, is that there's in art, I think there's a lot to be said for subtlety and knowing how much to push something and how much to pull back and not overdo things. And in watching the IPC judging, there are a lot of images I see that are, it's impressive what somebody's been able to do with Photoshop or whatever, but it's too much. It's just too overdone, and it's easy to do that when you get into editing, because you're like, well, if turning it up to 10 is cool, imagine turning it up to 20. It's like, well, that's not always what you need to do. Sometimes you need to be at like 6, and then and I'm learning that more and more in my editing, that these drastic slider moves a lot of times just ruin my image. It's a lot of subtle tweaks and moving this a little bit here and tweaking that, and I think it just takes time to learn that, but to learn the art of subtlety. And I think with sky replacement, that's the same thing. You want it to look like believable. Like, oh, well, that, I wonder if that was a sky that replaced or not. But it looks like that could have actually happened. And so, yeah. I just think there's something to be said for learning to be subtle enough. Yeah.
Yeah, just because you can crank it to 11. Right, yeah.
Right.
Teresa says her sky replacement and neural filters went away after playing with them yesterday. Ideas on how to get them back. The only thing I would say to check first is your mode that you're in. Make sure you're not in one of these other modes besides RGB and 8 or 16-bit. Sometimes being in one of those other modes can block you from accessing certain features. I'm not sure what else could be causing it, though. So... All right, let's continue on. We've got a couple more images. This is Timmy's shot from the first Zion workshop last weekend. And we did have no sky replacement here. We did have a really nice sunset sky there.
Wow.
That's a nice location where, we've shot this direction many times, Toby, on our trip, but I don't remember being at this spot before.
No, we don't go here with the big group. It's too many people.
Okay.
This is actually this is a pretty common spot. It's just the kind of your main bridge in Zion, right by the up canyon turn. So this is where you decide you're either going up the canyon with the shuttles or you're going out the east side of Zion. And I've shot sunset here and stars here, and both can be pretty nice.
Yeah.
But it's a little tight.
One of the things that I'll tell you is I feel like the crop is way too tall, and I only say that because there you go. The horizon line was kind of right in the middle, and I just didn't like that. I also didn't want to come down from the top too much and lose that beautiful orange that's right at the very top. So I like what you're doing there. You may even want to come in slightly on either side, just so that you have more water taking up the foreground than other stuff.
For me, what really was an easy choice down below is just this kind of messy brush pile, and coming in from that is gone. And what I'm looking at when I crop there is we still have this little hint of a path that kind of brings us around this bush and into the scene. Yeah.
And then I would you've got a lot of heavy detail in the lower portion of this picture. And then you get up to the sky and it just looks muted. At least on my screen it does. So I personally would add some drama to the sky, because to me that's more interesting than what's going on in the foreground, although that's beautiful too. But I would really punch up that sky so that as your eye travels up the picture, because that's how we naturally look at it. We kind of start at that bottom left corner, and then we travel up and through the picture. You get up to the sky, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, so I just upped texture clarity, dehaze a little bit, warmed it up a little bit. Hey, you purists out there, look at this. This is the original sky. We just are tweaking it a little bit. It doesn't seem so bad now when we have the choice of easily one-click sky replacement, does it? Just want to say that. It's a little bit of a slippery slope, but...
I would still consider, though, Toby, me personally, when it comes to sky over rocky formations and stuff, I take the texture the other way, actually soft.
Okay.
I like the dehaze, because that'll kind of punch it up a bit, but then with the texturing, I like to soften it more. And
Mm,
yeah, there you go.
that's quite nice.
That might be a little too soft, but you get,
Mhm.
you get the point.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. And I might add a tiny bit more contrast to the Watchman itself here,
Mhm.
but otherwise, really nice.
It's a
Nice
beautiful
job,
shot.
Tim. Yeah. All right, Kevin Walker's got this kind of artsy low wave shot, and right away I feel like it's hard to tell, but it doesn't feel. Somewhere around here feels a little straighter to me.
Mm-hmm.
And is this one of those shots where you're like, well, this is what I'm like. Right away, I feel like this is a story here by itself.
Yep.
And,
Yeah,
and,
I was
and
thinking the same.
Agreed.
stands on its own. And when you have the rest, then you're kind of left wandering around a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of stuff happening, and you just kind of want to capitalize on the most pertinent piece and congruent piece of the frame. So
Looks like a lot of noise reduction might have happened in the rocks there. I feel like it looks all kind of masked out, or
It does, it looks very soft, and then in the rocks, in the water itself is a bit noisier than I expect at ISO 100. So it does, something else is going on here, Kevin, and I'm not sure what, but I think this water could be softened a bit more. I'll get the brush. One of the updates to Lightroom, or this update to Lightroom, was supposed to improve kind of the speed of the brushing, and if I just kind of up the noise reduction and brush it through here real quick, just to get rid of some of that grain.
it's hard for me to see that detail on my screen here through the broadcast, but the rocks almost look like they were like you were in the sharpening tool, and then you masked it, and it just kind of flattens everything out.
Yeah, they look polished in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, it could just be the polishing from the water. Could be going
Yeah,
out, but
it does look funny. Cool. And maybe even come in and see. So this is where you start to decide, like, and this is what I was looking at in some PPA images. We have just this one other dark line that catches your eye, and it would be nice either crop that out, so we come in a little bit tighter, or just kind of mask it out, so that you really, there's nothing distracting you from this kind of cool wave coming over the rocks there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, last one. Brian Scanlon, Stations of the Cross.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just,
I like I just like the geometry, the repetitive thing, and it's cool when you just see something like that happening, and I don't know, it just
There's a lot to look at, and it's a busy image without feeling like it's a busy image. I feel like
it's like intentionally busy.
Yeah. I get this cross. I see this cross. This is how when I opened it up, I was like, I got the title, Stations of the Cross. And then there's another one. Oh, and another one.
Yeah.
And it feels thoughtfully framed to give you each of these in a way that seems very deliberate. And I like that.
I would spend some pretty good time here, Brian. I always like challenging Brian because he's, just watched him grow so much over the last couple of years. He's just turning into such a fantastic photographer and an artist in the computer. I would spend some time editing and really darkening the areas that have some bright spots poking out, like in that lower left corner down in there, and basically anywhere around those crosses, and maybe even come back and paint light on that movement from left to right of the crosses themselves. You can almost darken the whole scene down, but then paint in some light on the crosses as you go from left to right, if that makes sense to you guys. I'd spend some time working on that, and then really just kind of darken the areas in the background that aren't part of that cross story. It's still there, but you've simplified it by kind of shadowing them out a bit.
Yeah.
What if you replace the sky?
Yeah,
You're kind of
you're kind of like you put a lot of darkness in, then you're erasing it away with this brush. And this is exactly kind of what I was getting at.
Yep. Yep. Very cool. Nice. Hey, before we leave Photoshop, since we're right here, let's just go back to Timmy's. It's kind of a colorful one with all of the pieces we need for this. So the new panel is color grading right here. And you've got a mid-tone color wheel, a shadow color wheel, and a highlight color wheel. And you've got kind of your brightness for that as well. So this is the shadows. As I drag it to the right, I am raising the brightness value of the shadows or lowering them. In a lot of ways, some of that is very similar to what you could do either in the HSL panel or the tone curve. But now, in addition to the brightness and darkness of that region, you can adjust its color. So if we look, I feel like a lot of the darker areas here are kind of green. And so if we wanted to shift that green to be even more green, it's a very easy way to, if you know all of the colors you want are within this kind of region, to shift. Or for the highlights of the brighter portions of the sky, we could shift that off to the red, and then suddenly you have a much warmer, deeper sunset. And then the midtones, I don't know what to do with the midtones in this shot. First off, I'm going to bring them down a little just because a little bit more contrast, like so. And then, of course, with any panel, we have the little turn on and off. Let's see what it looked like before and after. I probably pushed it a little further than I would personally, but I think it illustrates nicely the power within this color grading wheel.
I really like it. I think I'm excited to play around with that, because one thing I struggle with as I've done some family photo shoots lately is sometimes the wardrobe, that like just sometimes the things people wear are not blending in with nature like they should. And so I'm having to do a global tweak to the whole photo to try to get everything to sort of flow and feel like it works together. And I've messed around with the individual sliders so much, and sometimes just being able to kind of play around with the midtones, the highlights, the shadows, and just in the way that you just were demonstrating. I was pretty amazed how quickly I was able to get this one photo to a better place last night. Just kind of initially playing around with it. Yeah.
Sorry. And did you say were there people in it?
Yes, there were people, yeah. And they looked great. It was some of the colors. I've talked about this in the past. I feel like the color green in nature is really tricky sometimes, because it can cast a green. They call it a green cast. Like the whole photo will look like it's too green, and I'm thinking like, well, I need to warm it all up, and then I warm it up, and then their skin looks terrible. So a lot of times what I'm noticing is the skin tone is fine. It's just the color green is just so vibrant, and you have to really mess around with that. And I think having this color grading option is going to really help me and a lot of us to be able to fine tune that.
Yeah. Nice. Just real quick, you have different ways to view this panel. You have all three wheels at the same time, or you can go through and have a larger version of the shadows, midtones, or the highlights, and then you can do a global adjustment as well. I'm not sure how the global adjustment is really terribly different than working with temp and tint. I think it's just kind of a similar way to approach the same, but with a little bit more finer control, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you have your blending mode between them down below. So if you wanted to, like I said, I think I pushed it too far. Instead of trying to go back here and adjust each one, I can just kind of dial all of it back a little bit more as well. And also you can do the balance between. Actually, no, I guess balance would be a better way to describe kind of pulling it back globally, and blending is, I don't know.
I will say this for everybody. This is something I'm learning more and more as I do this, is judge it with your eyes. Don't just look at the numbers, and really take a look at what you're doing. And as you're sliding something, look at the photo, because it's easy to be caught up in where the number is and how it, how it sits on a slider or in the color grading tool. But really just take a look and be like, does that look good? Does that, and also it's really important to step away from your image. Once you've kind of been looking at it for a long time, step away from it and then come back to it. Because a lot of times you'll see it differently and you'll be like, oh gosh, I totally overdid the saturation or the vibrance or the green and because it's once you start playing around with color, it's like a Pandora's box, and it just starts. You can like lose control really quickly. So
Yeah, good points.
So just make everything black and white. That's
sometimes.
Yeah,
sometimes. All right. Hey, everybody who sent photos in, thank you so much. If you're watching this and you haven't submitted before and you're a pen member, you should take advantage of this. I think you see that we're nice folks and we offer some constructive criticism that will help you improve your photos and your photography. And if you're not a pen member and you're watching this, you should consider joining for the fantastic community and all of the learning resources. And if you're watching this and you haven't yet hit that thumbs up button, I'd appreciate that. We appreciate that. It's a nice way to thank us for our time. And Steve and David Carr's social accounts, try to put the word Insta and account together, Insta accounts and Facebook accounts and YouTube channel in David Carr's case are all linked right down below this video. You should go give these guys a follow to see what they're up to in between times that I drag them on this show. Let's start with the big news. The news everybody's waiting to talk about. The 5D Mark IV got a firmware update. Is that what we're waiting to talk about?
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, you're muted. Wait.
Oh, I hear him.
Oh, is it my headphones? Does that boink just make my headphones go away?
Must be what it was.
Hello?
Yeah.
Nope, it's just me. How embarrassing. Hang on a second.
All right.
I don't have my... Oh, yeah, I do. So I was trying out these new Pixel Buds that Google sent along with, and I guess they just died on me. So let me plug in these horrific backup headphones that I have here. I was so excited to be wireless, but that just didn't work.
Well, you were just till they died. So.
Yeah, there we go.
I gotta say, speaking of wireless, if I can just mention this, in doing these school photos, it's nonstop. It's all day. Just I don't even get a break. And I've been using battery-powered strobes and battery-powered LED panels to light up my white backdrop. And man, it was such a learning curve yesterday because you talk about stuff like dying on you. It was like this battery, then that one, and I have backups and all that, but it was just a nightmare. And so I finally got it all sorted out. But yeah, we rely so much on that stuff. I love being as wireless as possible, but man, when you're in the middle of a shoot and that stuff starts dying, it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
To think about it. It's actually a great point, David. You reminded me of my first paid gig. I shot a dance recital, which talk about like going straight to a pack of wolves, man. Light, fast paced.
Yeah.
Kind of the Bridezilla stuff was going on constantly behind the curtain. It was a nightmare. And I showed up with my flash for Phil. And I had just regular Eveready batteries or whatever in there. And boy, what a mistake that was. Because you're just like, first of all, you got to shoot fast.
Yeah.
The flash, that's a challenge as it is. But then I burned through so many dang batteries. About halfway through the thing, I was completely out of batteries.
Oh, gosh.
I got myself, a bunch of rechargeables. And also learned, like, maybe you don't use a Phil flash when you're shooting a dance recital.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It's all learning. It's all, live and learn.
But, these things that, like, had I talked to one person who actually shot a dance recital before, they could have advised me on that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've been there.
Yeah. Okay, jokes aside, I said 5D Mark IV. It did get a firmware update. It's just little minor things. It's always fun to see what Canon releases. In the great history of Canon, I feel like there's only been... This isn't true. There's been at least more than one firmware update that was significant and really added a whole host of features, and that was to the original 7D. They made it a lot. It could shoot a faster burst rate. It could do all of these things. People were like, "Whoa, you did so much things through firmware update." And since then, Fuji, Olympus, and Sony even have released firmware updates that have been pretty significant. So Canon doesn't typically do that. So that was the joke. But let's spend a moment talking about the EOS R5. You can't see it behind me, but I did publish my review of the R6 right before I left on all of these different workshops and trips. And you could go watch that. And the part where I say psychologically disappointing because the R6 is 20 megapixels, which is enough for just about all of our uses, but it does feel a little less because it is a little less than what a lot of people are offering. You strike that from the review, and you've got the R5. I mean, I did not expect to like this camera as much as I do. I did not expect Canon to have made such a leap forward as they did. And yes, we got to separate whoever marketed and did all of the video stuff and were like 8K, 8K, 8K. Those people, I hope, were fired long ago, because the fact that they focused so heavily on that and then released a camera that didn't quite, no, it does not meet a professional videographer's needs if they want to use those features without overheating. It's going to do that. But you take that hype out, you take those video features out, it still shoots incredibly gorgeous, easy video, and it is a fantastic stills camera. It is great. I love it. It's so usable. The Canon touch interface, the fully articulating screen, the layout that both feels similar to Canons I've used in the past, but also is modern enough with all of the different dials. I mean, it's a little less customizable than my Sony, but I didn't really care much because you don't really, I don't feel like I need to customize it much. The way it works out of the box is very smart, very intuitive, and it's great. I mean, the only other negative things I could say about it is battery life is, not as good as my Sony, and the price is a little bit higher. And in some ways, like, you can get my Sony. When I say my Sony, I'm talking about the A7R3. That's what I've been shooting with now for a couple years. I think it's currently somewhere in the low 2000s, maybe mid 2000s is its price. And so that's almost half this price. And they are very similar in features and functions and kind of performance. But the usability of this camera with that fully articulated full touch screen is just really, really nice.
Nice.
So how did it feel? A couple things with Canon that I really like are the ergonomics and the fact that they're built like a tank. I take care of my stuff, but I just really hard on my camera. Yeah. I never worry about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that ergonomically it feels great. They did a nice job kind of trying to be true to the Canon feel in hand, but also making it a little bit smaller as mirrorless can be. I think that was a nice blend. I will say another benefit that I give my Sonys is that with third-party lenses from Tamron, this guy can be nice and small and lightweight. I've got a kind of chunky L bracket on it right now, and I have the chunky Sigma 14-24. But it can be very small and lightweight. This guy can too if I throw on like their 35 and things like that. But these RF lenses are pretty chunky, and we don't have any third party from Tamron or Sigma yet. But I think we will see those down the road.
Sure. Sure you will.
And I think people who like a little bit more camera feel in hand will appreciate this.
That's kind of what I was getting at. For me personally, I have big hands.
Yeah.
So it's like I like to have some more substantial.
Yeah, I agree. I don't necessarily need the camera to be tiny. I'd like to feel like it's substantial enough. Especially if you're trying to do something professionally, it's not always about everything being lighter and smaller. And a lot of times we tout that as like the reason to move to mirrorless, but it's kind of like to me, it's like an added bonus in general, because some of the stuff is not any lighter or smaller. And even the stuff that is, it's not like it's that much lighter or smaller. It's just somewhat. So I don't see that as a huge selling point. It's more about the future technology and the EVF and all that, which that's where I've benefited, not so much on the weight and the size.
Yeah, I'll say that I definitely meet people in the field that go Sony or have gone mirrorless because they want to go lighter and smaller. So it is a market segment, but I do agree that there was a lot of push early on with a talk of like mirrorless is lighter and smaller, go for it. And yeah, you're right. It's not always.
Yeah, I mean the prime. I mean the zooms that I've bought so far for the Nikon are really pretty heavy, and the 70-200 is the same size as the F mount. but I don't think I think they would have made it smaller if they could have been able to still get the same optics out of it. But it's a stellar lens. I love it. So,
Yeah.
and the camera is smaller, so I am losing some of the weight. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, there are rumors that the the Canon 70-200 f4 coming is going to be about this same size as the 24-105. So I think we will see some additional lenses. And some of my early concerns was with Canon and their ecosystem and not having a ton of lenses. I think they've done a great job. There's still some gaps, and also they're expensive. But I feel in the R6, I felt like I needed to devote a segment in that review to say, hey, you're going to buy a $2,400 camera, but you got to be aware that all of the lenses you're buying are going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I need to give that warning. If you're buying a camera that's almost $4,000, you should probably expect that the lenses are going to be a chunk as well. I'd like to see them get out some more affordable lenses. They have some, but I'd like to see even more.
Yeah.
Brian wants to know how the dynamic range is. I haven't, dived in and made any comparisons versus the Sony, but this is basically the camera I shot for 90% of the 2 weeks on the road, and I'm very happy with everything I've seen. It feels like it is right there and comparable to the Sony and the Nikons now, which I just expected there to be some kind of deal breaker, because Canon, I feel like, has broken my heart a little bit over the last couple of years with not quite getting there and being like, almost embarrassed for them in their first release. I was like, this is priced out. It's missing important features that other manufacturers already have on the market and have had, and you kind of bring what looks like a half-hearted attempt, and I felt like there'd still be some issue. And videographers watching this right now are like, yeah, there's still an issue. But approaching this from a photography standpoint, this camera is fantastic. Really is.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah. And, I shot a little bit of the 8K footage with it, a little bit. I didn't have any overheating issues. But again, if you're seriously using this for video, you are going to run into those issues. Or as my friend Dan Watson has run into, he never has actually, well, I shouldn't say never, but when he's using it, it's constantly warning him that it's about to overheat. And when you're using it in a professional situation, that's not a good feeling. You're like, is it about to fail on me? Oh, nope, it's still working for another 5 minutes. Is it going to fail now? Nope, it's still. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that moving forward. But I think a big deal was made out of it from Canon, and then so you had the videographers and the videographer YouTubers being like, holy crap, this is bad. And it's not good. But again, from a photo standpoint, I'm really happy with this camera.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's move on to talk about the new Nikons, Z6ii, Z7ii. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention, but they seem like they solve some issues people had. Mm-hmm. Is it enough to make people happy, though? David Carr, as a Nikon shooter, what do you think about these two new cameras?
As a Nikon shooter and as a member of some Nikon forums on Facebook, nothing will ever make anyone happy. There's always got to be something to gripe about. So it really is. I'm into cars, and car stuff was always like that when I would get on these forums. It's just, there's always somebody that knows way more than they should about everything. Right. And they're never satisfied. They're always, and it's always some gripe about the dumbest thing, like no 10-bit this. Like, okay, yeah, it doesn't have the 10-bit whatever, but if you're like a serious videographer that's like really concerned about that, you're probably not shooting on a Nikon. Like, you're probably going to be getting something that's just geared for that, kind of like the whole 8K thing with the Canon. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I think, you guys know me. I tend to buy and trade and sell and buy and trade and sell. I've wondered if these updates are enough for me to want to switch. I didn't think so, but I will say I had a dumb situation the other day. I'm ashamed to admit, but I did a family shoot, and I was shooting mostly with my Z7. And then I picked up my Z6 that had my 50 millimeter on it, and I went to do just a couple of shots with that. And when I got home, I opened the card slot door, and there was no card in the camera. So I didn't even actually shoot any photos. They were showing up on the buffer. I was looking at them, but then they were gone. I was in a hurry. It was a dumb mistake. But I was like, well, I probably would have left one of the two cards in there had I had two cards. So I was like, well, there are situations where I think that would be nice. I am excited that they finally have the 2 card slots. They should have done it from the beginning, but they didn't. I think I understood their line of thinking up front, but I think a lot of it had to do with just, let's face it, it was money, it was budget, it was Nikon has not been in the best place financially in the last few years, and I think it was tiptoeing into the mirrorless world for them to release the 6 and the 7. So they had to update something by now. Some people are disappointed that it's not like the greatest camera ever. I'm going to just tell you, it's all in the results. The shots I'm getting with the Z's are amazing. I really think they're some of the best photos I've ever taken, and I'm not sitting there like worried about what it's lacking all the time. I do wish some things were a little better. I wish the autofocus was a little better, and I don't know. It remains to be seen if that's going to be improved in these new cameras, but it's still pretty dang good. And so, yeah, I mean, I know Sony excels in the autofocus, but I'm like, all right, folks, if you want to switch and lose thousands of dollars just so you can get a little bit better autofocus, I mean, knock yourselves out. But I just don't see a point in doing that. And for these new ones, I like the fact that we can now add a battery grip with a shutter button, and it's an actual real battery grip that's going to be useful. But I'd like to think that I could pause and wait to see what they come out about a year from now, because I think we're going to start seeing from all the manufacturers that really pro level bigger body with the vertical grip built in kind of mirrorless stuff.
So the kind of equivalents of the D4, D5, and the 1DX Mark III mirrorless versions.
I've been feeling like that's what I would love to hold out for, because I'm doing fine with what I've got, and I'm very happy with it. I know I can be happier, but I'm not like whining about these cameras. I'm pretty happy with them.
Yeah. So I got this is Barney's post at DP Review. He's been a Z7 shooter, and what he wanted in a replacement was this list of things here, including backlight controls and a bunch of other stuff. But in bold is what is improved over the first model versus the second. So they're saying slightly faster AF and better focus reliably in low light. We now do have a proper vertical grip. Actually, can you explain that to me, David Carr? The first models didn't accept, or
they had a battery grip that they came out with that was pretty lame, because number one, it was super expensive, and all it did was hold batteries. It didn't have a shutter button. So yeah, you got a grip, but you still had to hold it. It wasn't really a grip. It was just batteries. So.
Got it. Okay. And of course, improved video, and now the dual card slots, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, I think for anybody who's wanting to switch, or if you're a Nikon shooter and you're ready to get the next camera, I just think you really don't have a reason not to get into the mirrorless world. I mean, it's each his own, but I just think at this point, there's not a whole lot holding these cameras back. I mean, the autofocus, if it is indeed improved a little bit, even especially the low light thing, that's going to be, I think, enough of an improvement for most people to make the switch.
Did anybody else lose Carr, or just me?
I got
feedback. Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
I don't know what you said, but yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I don't even know what I said. I did post it. I did on this Nikon forum on Facebook. I've been reading all the gripes. It's almost become like a meme, a running joke now. And I posted one the other day that said, "What? No miniature vacuum built into the camera to clean the sensor?" Like, I'm disappointed, because that's the level of like ridiculousness that I think I'm reading.
Yeah. Nobody's ever happy. Somebody left that as a comment on my review of the R6. They're like, this guy's never happy. I was like, my review was really positive. The only thing I did was point out some drawbacks that people, and I feel like that's my job.
That is your job. That's what you do. I mean, you're supposed to point that stuff.
Yeah. I will say, speaking of not having a vacuum, the Canon does that kind of cool trick of the shutter shuts down and protects. Somehow, though, the other day after I finished shooting a bunch of video, there was a gigantic thread, pocket lint across the sensor. I was like, so even though it does that, somehow that got on there. That bothered me a little bit. And I see David Newbold, we had a big conversation kind of around David's question a couple of shows ago He's a 5D Mark IV user. He feels like for the price to upgrade to this, it's a little silly because his 5D Mark IV is doing well. The image quality differences are, they're there, but they're not significant for that chunk of change. So he's starting to lean a little towards medium format, maybe like the Fuji GFX 50. I would just say, David, as Brian is coaching you, it's a fantastic camera. But when you talk about cost, you're now switching all of your lenses as well. Whereas if you hang on to the Canon a little bit longer, and Carr, as you mentioned, probably a more sports-oriented, very fast camera's coming soon.
Yeah.
Probably the rumors are, and I say soon, within the next year-ish or so.
Sure.
Rumors of kind of a 5DS or 5DR replacement, so that very high megapixel replacement. All of these lenses they're producing are going to support or do well with a very high megapixel sensor. And you might be patient a little bit longer, and then you don't have to switch out all of your lenses. But let's see.
Yeah, it's I sympathize with where his head is at on that whole thing. But I certainly wouldn't give up my 5D Mark IV. I know he shoots 5D Mark IV. If you were to do that, it wouldn't be a switch necessarily, be an addition to. Because I did that. I went to medium format with the X1D, but I still shoot my Canon a lot, for action and everything else. Because shooting medium format it's very, very specific. You're pretty much just shooting landscapes. You're not shooting anything that moves.
Yeah.
Or you're doing studio work or something like that. So, but for those mediums, it's awesome. And I happen to be a person who loves the fact that it makes me slow down and really think about my settings. And what I'm doing, the files that come out are just beautiful. They're just so inspiring and fun to work on. But, I've said this before on this show and leading into why I bought medium format. Like, for me, I really had to justify the expense because there was a lot to dive into. But I thought, I do this for a living. This is my livelihood. I shoot real estate and stuff, and I can use it on every single shoot. So, I certainly wouldn't do it. A switch. My advice to David in the chat was, you may want to just kind of hold off on a little bit and see if there might be some price drops on the R5, especially with the holidays around the corner. The economy isn't exactly coming along as it was, 10 months ago. And so some of these camera manufacturers come up on the holidays, they may be trying to move camera bodies and offer some great deals. Or if they're going to come out with an S replacement, that would be certainly something to pay attention to, as you mentioned, Toby, because the glass will still work. So I can easily walk in David's shoes right now, and that's kind of a tough place to be in, because you've been saving your money and you're ready to make a change. You've been holding your breath long enough, and the R5 comes out and you're ready to do it. Like, I'm just not ready to stroke the tech for that yet. So.
Yeah, you have to decide if you're ready to adopt that. I mean, we all know it's going there and it's going to continue to go there more and more, but it's not like you have a slouch of a camera now. You can get a lot done with that. And the thing I do like that we have as an option as Canon and Nikon shooters is that we can put these adapters on. We can still use our older glass, and it works beautifully. It's just and eventually you'll switch to more mirrorless lenses as you go. I think as you start to see the quality of that glass and just the whole feel of shooting mirrorless, it starts to me, it became very addictive quickly. And that's why I just was like, I just took the plunge. I said, I'm ready to just go all in, even though it's not all totally ready. It's not all like seasoned enough to be just like perfect. It's pretty dang good. So
I will say though, if he's anyone like me, where I kind of, my medium format sort of came at a time when I was really looking to do something different, and it was very inspiring to me. I don't really know how to wrap too many words around that, but I just felt very pulled to try and make that happen. And I will tell you, after a couple of years of doing it now, I still get so excited to shoot that camera.
That's
Every
cool.
time I put it in my hands and I start making adjustments, I'm taking a shot. I love that camera. I love it more today than I did 2.5 years ago.
That's great.
So, there is a certain allure to shooting media format that's kind of hard to wrap practical words around. And for me, it really satisfies that. It continues to really, really good. There is part of me that looks at my 5D Mark IV, which I've had for a number of years, my workhorse camera, and I still love it, but I picked it up and I'm like, oh man, that's good. I want to go back to the video format, but it might be wildlife, it might be action, where I really need that camera, and it's still a great piece of equipment. I still really enjoy it. But there's something super exciting about shooting format. So,
Steve, your audio isn't great sometimes. It's a little muddy. And I just bring that up because I want to kind of ask you a little bit about the iPhones too. We're going to start to wrap this show up, but
too far away from the microphone or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, it sounds a little better now.
Yeah.
Okay.
But real quick before we get that, David McKay has popped in the chat and said, congrats on the pen members who are in PPA. Is reminding me that the virtual travel show is happening right now and will be happening through this evening. And so after the show, in a little while, I'm going to be on this virtual travel show as well. You can pop in, ask me camera questions, ask me travel questions. Let's chat a little bit. All of the info you need to know. There is a cost to attend the virtual travel show, but we have free VIP passes for you. And so you can get in and look at all these different booths and talk to these different people. It's not just us that you have access to when you use this coupon. So all of that information is in the show notes, which is linked right down below. So be sure to check that out. And if I might be on earlier, but I'll definitely be on at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Pacific time. So in a couple of hours, and love to chat with anybody who wants to chat cameras, travel cameras, best travel cameras, or just photography in general as well. So, all right. So you're going to talk about the iPhones. I teased this at the beginning. Google sent me very nicely. Thank you, Google. I appreciate getting sent these things. There's no contract or anything. They're just like, here, these are presents. This is the Pixel 5, the Pixel Buds, which I guess their battery life isn't quite as good as I want them to be. The new Pixel 5 is, I'll be honest, it's just not very exciting. It's a nice phone. I think its price is good. In some ways, it's kind of an antidote to these very high-end flagships. It comes in at, $699? But it's using the same camera that the last version used, except that they now have a wide angle instead of the portrait. They don't have the face unlock. They have the finger unlock, which, I complained about the face unlock, or I complained about missing the finger lock. I'd like to have both. I'm very used to the face unlock now. And wouldn't it be nice to have both? Can't we have both? Why only one or the other? Yeah. I guess that's why we have this price. I do like the size of this one. It's so small and lightweight that for me, when I go running with my phone, I really appreciate that. Or even hiking with it. It's not this big chunk in my pocket. And the video features are updated as well. But in general, it's not that exciting. And there are some other phones like the iPhone mini, which has just as good a camera, I feel. And you've got the Samsung Galaxy 20 FE or SE that is the same price with better specs. And again, the camera, I think in the real world is probably very similar to this, but a Samsung at least gives you that full manual control. The Pixel, you're very limited in the camera. Yes, it does take great snapshots, but you're kind of limited. So, and I almost wonder if Google, they lost the main guy, Mark Morris, who did all of the kind of really heavy lifting of the algorithms and computational photography that I feel like really vaulted the Pixel line to the front, and people were like, night sight, it's amazing. And I've taken, Milky Way shots with it. It is quite amazing that you can do that with your phone, but he's gone now. He went off to some other company, and I just wonder if Google's going to do what Google does so often, and that is just kind of let some things die a slow, quiet death, and that might be the Pixel line. I'm both feeling like this is kind of on the way out, and also maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting kind of bored and looking around for what else is out there.
There's
So
some truth to what you're speculating there.
yeah. So tell me, should I switch to iPhone?
Uh, well, I think with the iPhone 12, it's what the rumors have been saying for a long time. I think a lot of people were disappointed when the 11 it came out and the 11 Pro just because the hardware itself was a form factor that we've seen since the 6, basically. And so it's an awesome phone. I think that the lines have been blurred a lot between the 12 and the 12 Pro. I personally don't see how you can justify spending the extra money for the 12 Pro, because you're talking about, let's say, $799 versus $999 from the 12 to the 12 Pro. So you got an extra $200 unless you really need that third camera lens or you're doing stuff with the augmented reality. I forget what they call that lens back there. But if you want all that, then great. But they're using 2 of the same lenses in the Pro are being used in 12. And you get a bunch of different colors with the 12. The sizing is really weird. I don't know what Apple's been doing lately, but like the 12 has this 6.1 and then just one size, right? And then they've got the mini that they just came out with. And then you get into the Pro line and you've got one that's a little bit smaller, kind of right in between the two, and then you've got this giant poster of a phone. And supposedly they've done something with the Max line, the giant phone that has a better sensor in one of the cameras.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Stability control or something like that. But I think had they put, Toby, you were just talking about you missed the finger sensor and then you got used to Face ID, and now can't you just have both? For me, that was the big disappointment in the 12 is they should have had Face ID. Okay, that's here to stay with all screen, but they could have easily put a finger sensor in the power button. Didn't they do that in one of the iPads recently? I think
maybe they did. I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
Just introduced one of the new iPads that's got a Touch ID in the power button. I can't remember if that was rumor or if that actually happened. Why couldn't you do that, Apple? That mini with a finger sensor and Face ID, I'd be really into that. Plus, it's $699. It's killer buy. And I love the buys. So $100 more gets you a little bigger phone. I think the Pro looks better. Those kind of matte colors that they have and stuff, or more metallic looking colors than the glossy stuff. I think it looks better.
It's so funny though. The color thing is Apple sells us on look at all these colors, and then you put a case on it, and you're like, okay, I never see the color. I mean, unless you put a clear case, but I mean, that was the thing for me. I wanted the whatever this metallic green thing is, but this is the case. I actually found a case that's the color of the phone. But
and I wanted my wife. We got her the product red iPhone SE, and I had the black one. But I went out and I got a D brand pin that basically is a red phone. So you can kind of make whatever color you want.
Yeah, it's funny. I do get caught up in that, and then a week later, I'm like, who cares what color the thing is?
Yeah. And Jeff points out he works in retail. People come in saying they don't need cameras because their phone is way better. We hear that on workshops so often, and sometimes it's tongue in cheek. You take a picture, that you take a picture with your camera, then you pull out your phone, and you're like, holy crap, that looks way better. I mean, the the phones are doing that automatic HDR these days. We have this amazing, bright, gorgeous screen on all of these new phones, and so it just does look awesome. But the answer is, as soon as you want to print that big or really work on it, it's going to start to fall apart. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of people that does not apply to. So that's why the point and shoot market is basically dead. And really, you got to go high end.
To me, it's one of the cameras in my arsenal of cameras. I mean, it's not one that I'm using for PPA competition level images or weddings or anything where it calls for that level of professionalism. I was at a store yesterday. I had to go pick up a battery from one of my strobes because of the whole battery issue. And a pretty nice store here in Atlanta that we don't really have camera shops here, but it's kind of like a little boutique private store. And I went in and it was all like super high end professional stuff, phase 1 cameras they sell and all this. And I saw these big prints on the wall. Yeah, I see these prints and I just was like, okay, this is why real cameras still exist, is because there really is a market for like top notch, like full on the best of the best kind of quality. And phones just aren't going to touch that. Yeah. It's amazing what they can do. And when you just want to share photos with people, which is really where we see most images anyway, you get a lot off the phone. But try to do wildlife photography with a phone, or try to do some really, try to do a wedding with the phone. It's just, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And the other thing, we haven't mentioned, and this is kind of out of our wheelhouse, is the 5G. The fact that this phone and the new iPhone support 5G. Somebody made a supercut of all of the times they said 5G at the Apple event. It's a YouTube video, and it's just like 5G, 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 5G. So here in Seattle, we're pretty tech heavy. I was like, oh, this is exciting. And I've seen 5G pop up on the phone a couple of times. And like the second time I saw it, I was like, oh, I'll pull over and do a speed test because, I might review this phone. I probably won't. But it was fast. Oh, actually, you can't see that. It's 82 megabytes down. That's not bad. But that wasn't when I pulled over, because by the time I pulled over, like half a block, the 5G went away.
Yeah.
So it's
the issue with years from now, 5G is great. And Marquez Brownlee said it best. He said, if you're one of these people, I guess statistics have shown that people hold on to their iPhones longer than any other buyer out there. Android buyers and stuff, they're flipping them over more often. So, 5G does nothing for me right now.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who holds on to your phone for 5 years, then get the new one, because 5 years from now, 5G is going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we didn't mention that I thought was super cool was the MagSafe on the back.
Oh yeah, that looks neat.
It's opening up just all kinds of accessories and cool things that you can do with it. And I think that was brilliant. And quite honestly, I read a lot of the rumors and stuff. I don't remember reading anything about that until the day before the announcement. So, a lot of people were kind of surprised by that one. I thought that kudos to Apple, and also kudos to Apple for taking the power brick out of their shipments.
Yeah.
And even they do include the cord, okay, fine. But eventually I think you'll just get a phone. And I know there's a lot of people that just feel like that's an integral part of the phone, like you have to charge it. Well, at this point, if you're anything like me, I literally have a drawer full of Apple power bricks and lightning cables and stuff. In fact, the past few phones that I've gotten, I just take the phone out, and the rest of the earbuds and the cables and the power brick all just stay in the box down in the basement.
Yeah.
So, we need to do a better job, I think, globally of just, you can buy that. Okay, charge a little less for the phone and let people buy that if they need it. Otherwise, it's a waste of the environment.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, let's answer a couple of quick questions. Jeff's got one. He says, do you prefer mirrorless or mirrored cameras? I don't see why people would buy mirrored cameras anymore when mirrorless seems like it's better and the future.
I can't totally disagree with that. I think if you're going out, we've talked about this on the show many times. If you're coming to us as photo instructors and saying, I want to invest good money in proper equipment, where should I start? I think all of us would probably recommend that you get into the mirrorless world with one of the brands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't see. I see some on some forums and things like that, people discussing it. Like, why would I get a mirrorless? Like, I can get the D750 for this much money now, and I'm like, that's true, you can, but you're talking about a camera that's 5-6 years old, and I just think, like, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was telling somebody, if you're already spending like a lot of money on something, but the one you really want is, let's say you're spending $1,500 on a camera body, but the one you really want is $2,500. But you're like, but I can save $1,000. Well, the thing is, you're already spending $1,500. You're already spending a lot of money, and the one you really want is $2,500. And you may not be able to afford it, and that's totally understandable. But if it's just well, hey, look how much money I saved, that nostalgia wears off pretty quickly when you still want the one that was $2,500. You're still wanting that thing. And so you have to ask yourself what matters to you. And I think with mirrorless, it's just, again, like I was saying earlier, it's not like they're perfect right now. I think Sony's obviously killing it and has been ahead of the pack. But Nikon and Canon are offering some pretty great stuff in the mirrorless world, and it's only going to get better. At this point, I just don't see any reason to go out and buy a D850 brand new or a 5D Mark IV brand new. I just think I don't know. I think you'll quit. I think in a year or so you'll be kind of regretting that. So
yeah, I agree. Brian wanted to know when I'm going to Zion again. It is October. It should be mid-October next year. I'm going to be reaching out to everybody who has expressed interest, letting them know the possible dates, and then kind of narrowing it down from there of who can go when. So, and then we answered the other ones already. So that's it. We're good. Cool. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys hopping back on with me to chat all things camera and photography. David, you can be followed. Let's bring that up and put it on the screen for a minute at David Carr _photo on Instagram to see up. You've been posting some of those. You mentioned you've been shooting the family sessions. You've been posting some cute pictures there.
Yeah.
You gonna post any from school, or you got some probably? You probably don't want to share random kid pictures.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to wait to see if I can get some permission. But I'm very happy with the way they're turning out. It's
nice.
It's a cool look, and it's very different from your traditional cheesy school photos. So
awesome.
And people seem happy. So
good. That's great. And Steve, you can follow Steve on Instagram. You've been a little quiet there, but your link to your Facebook page is down. You've been a little quiet there too, Steve. Come on, you got to give the people some content.
I've been very social media quiet. I've
good for you.
Going into this off-grid guy. I've actually just at my real estate business, I don't need a lot of social media to drive that. It's a lot of word of mouth, it's a lot of referral stuff, and I've been keeping quite busy with that. But yeah, so I do promise I'll get more. I can't promise Facebook because that's a whole drive all of its own. But Instagram, I'd like to get a little bit more active on posting.
Yeah. I tell you, I feel very punished by Instagram when I don't post regularly. And it could just be maybe I'm not posting good enough quality, but I really see a big engagement drop, which is annoying, to feel that pressure to constantly post.
Yeah, but that's kind of your life. That's the world that you're operating in. And fortunately, this year anyway, I've really found a lot of peace in kind of walking away from a lot of social media.
It's good.
I'm not saying everybody should do that or anything like that. I'm just saying for me, it's been a really good thing, and it's helped me to really just engage in real life. And guess what? Real life isn't quite as polarized as you see on social media.
Yeah.
It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
And gentlemen, I do hope we'll see some of your images soon. Both of you have merited in this round or in this year's PPA. And I think there's been some sharing on the Penn Facebook group, but I think it would be awesome to see you guys share out some of those images as well. And congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, those who are paying attention to this, I'm off Facebook these days, but I will take my 4 images once they've been viewed and judged, and I will share those to the Penn page because I know there's been a lot of good discussion going on about that. David McKay's kind of keeping me informed on that. So I'll share those and whether or not they get merited and stuff like that. So and happy to kind of hang around there for a time to answer questions.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And chat room, thank you everybody for hanging out with us on this Wednesday afternoon. And if you're watching this after the fact, thanks for watching it. And if you haven't already, take a moment to hit that thumbs up. And if you're not already a subscriber, it'd be nice if you press that little subscribe button. And Roy, thank you for hanging out and catching everybody's Q&As. I think we'll all be back next week.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks so much.